Hi, Lori.
Hi, Melissa.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This is we're going to have a chat and just Lori's going to tell her story and really share with you what her thoughts and feelings were when she was thinking about coming in and working with me and what she's learned and some of the breakthroughs and just really sharing from her heart what this journey is looking like for her. So welcome, Lori.
Thank you.
Awesome. So if you don't mind sharing, you know, kind of where were you before you started working with us? Kind of what was your story?
Um, well, in 2022, and I won't tell the whole story, I got really sick, ended up in the
Mhm.
hospital 2 times for a total of, I think it was 12 days, between the two stays.
Yeah.
Um, and the first time I went in, they ended up telling me I was septic. Anyway, big long story short, the second time I went in, they finally said, well, here's the deal. You have severe ulcerative colitis.
Mm.
And I said, well, thank God that you finally put a name to this because I'm going to die if you don't find something that's going to help me.
Yeah.
They put me on pretty heavy doses steroids, put me on um, an infusion,
Mm-hmm.
and they call it you know, biologic, targeted biologic infusion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, the first one they put me on didn't work. My body
Mm-hmm.
rejected it. So they did some more tests, said, okay, well, we're going to try this one, but we're going to have to give you a drug, an anti-rejection drug, which is
Yep.
a drug that they give a lot of um, transplant patients,
Mm-hmm.
and then put you on another infusion. So I did that. Went on the other infusion. I have been on it for a little over a year, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everything seems to be going okay. However, they kept telling me, um, you're gonna have to do this the rest of your life. You're gonna have to be
Oof.
on this. They wanted me to get off of the anti-rejection meds,
Mm-hmm.
which have some pretty wicked possibilities of side effects like
Yeah.
lymphoma and melanoma and some
Mm.
nastiness like that. So um, I did that, and then so I've been doing pretty good. But the fact that they were telling me I needed to do this for the rest of my life didn't make any sense to me, and I kept saying, yeah, there's got to be something better out there. And so when I heard about you, I told my husband, I said, I'm going to get a hold of her and I'm going to see what, because my oldest daughter had been saying, Mom, you need to see a functional medicine practitioner. And I was like, okay, but I don't even know what that, I don't even know where to
What
go.
is that?
And I know, how do you find one of those? Are they in the yellow pages? I guess that ages me because there aren't yellow pages anymore. Um, but anyway, so I found you, and I think you said to me one of the last times we talked that I was the first time we had talked, that I seemed like I felt like I was very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking about that a lot, and I thought, hmm, that's because that's kind of how I felt. That
Yeah.
kind of had been programmed into me. I don't know, programmed, that's not a really good word, but
Yeah.
um, I think that I had been kind of convinced that I was fragile, because it was like, um, you have to do these infusions every 8 weeks. You have to do this screening. You have to do blood work, all the time. You have to do all of these things. But then when I would say to them, okay, so what can I do in between? Like, I talked to a nutritionist and I said, while I was in the hospital the second time, and I said, okay, what kind of is, what do I need to do with food? Is there,
Yeah.
give me a diet or something, a
Something.
list of
Yeah.
something. And she said, well, there really isn't any. It's kind of a roulette game, I think is what she called it. And she said it's different for everybody.
Oh.
Some things that will bother you won't bother somebody else, and some things that will bother somebody else won't bother you. which is
Which is
true,
true. Yeah.
but I didn't like that, and then I got to the point where it was like, I don't know how many times I told my husband, maybe I just won't eat anymore. That, because I never knew what was
Yeah.
going to make me sick, what wasn't going to make me sick.
Mhm.
Um, and when I would go to my GI doctor, she kind of told me the same thing. And the last time I went in
Mhm.
to see her, she said, well, our goal here is to see you once a year and hope that the infusions keep you, um, and I don't remember the word that she used, but keep you not in line, but I mean the same kind of concept,
Yep.
keep you going good so that we don't have to see you more than once a year. And then you can just do these infusions for eternity, is what she said to me. And I looked at my husband and I went, no,
Uh,
no, I'm not gonna do that. That doesn't make any sense to me.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so after you and I started talking and you did all those tests, and I just thought, finally, number one, somebody's listening to me.
Yeah.
Um, number two, you were willing to say, okay, let's look at the underlying thing. Because when I would say to my doctors, and believe me, there were lots of them that I saw through this whole thing. When I would say to them, okay, because usually ulcerative colitis is, I mean, it's an autoimmune disease, but people are diagnosed between 30 and 45.
Yeah.
And I said, because I'm a nurse, and so it was like, okay, people, I'm a little north of 45. Why? what's what's going on here? And the doctor just said to me, well, we're seeing an increase of women your age being diagnosed with autoimmune disease. And I said,
Mm.
why? And he said, well, we don't know. I said, okay. I said,
Mm.
what causes it? And he said, well, inflammation. I said, okay, what causes inflammation? And he said, well, we don't know, but we can give you drugs that will help,
Oh.
you know, modify it
Yeah.
or calm it down or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, at that point in my life, I was just like, okay, give me something, because
Right.
I was sick enough. I honestly thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when you said, let's do these tests and see, like, food sensitivity tests and
Yep.
toxicity tests, and I thought, geez, at least she's willing to look, and tell me, number one, things I can avoid, number
Yeah.
two, things that are bothering me.
Yeah.
And one of the test results that we got back, I tried to tell my doctors that I thought that's what had caused this whole cascade of issues,
Oish.
and they pretty much
Yeah.
laughed at me. And I'm like, so you vindicated me in that one. Um, and so
Yeah.
then I started feeling like there is a way out of this. There is a
Exactly.
way out of this. And
Mhm.
I can feel, and and the other thing that I think I had told you before too, I didn't know you could eat and feel good after you ate. That was a
You
foreign
can.
concept to me, that I just thought, well, and I told you this too, but I'm
Mhm.
gonna tell you again. My granddaughter, who has celiacs,
Mhm.
had said to her mom at one point, Mom, I thought everybody felt crappy after they ate. Because she said, when we all get together for meals, or, we all get together to eat,
Mhm.
everybody sits around and moans and groans after they eat, like, oh, I'm so sick. And Aislinn said, I had
Yep.
no idea that that went away after a little bit because they just ate
Exactly.
too much.
Yeah.
And I thought that really turned a light on for me, because I was like,
Mhm.
okay, Aislinn, you're right. Because I
Yep.
had no idea. I had no
Mhm.
idea that you could feel good after you ate. So when we went through the food sensitivity tests and I found out, okay, stay away from this one, and that's not good for you, and oh, that's really going to cause a problem. It was like, way cool. I love this. And my friends will say to me, so did she put you on a diet, a special diet? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm learning how to avoid food. And they're like, well, I said, no, that's not. That's learning how to eat and not feel crappy after you do it.
Mhm.
And so that gave me hope that I could, um, I could get out of this.
Mm.
And so I did quit taking the anti-rejection meds.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't think that there were any side effects of those drugs.
Mhm.
But I feel I don't even know how, but I do feel better. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
emotionally or physically or both or whatever. Um, but I do feel better. And I think part of it is because I have hope.
Ah,
I have a pathway out of this, and I
love
love
that.
that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think just thinking back to when we one of our very first conversations, that was kind of the word that kept popping up in my mind when I was thinking about it. It's like, okay, there is like we can know what's causing our bodies to go
Hmm.
sideways. Like there are
Yeah,
real reasons and we can know them
right.
and we can do something about them. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
very simple and it kind
It
of is.
it does seem simple. And that's why I kept thinking, why are these guys not,
Yeah.
and like I said, when I would say to them, to help me figure out what is making my body
Mhm.
react like this. And they're like, well, we don't know. I mean, and these were very, I will say seasoned
Mhm.
MDs, that I was talking to. And they were, well, we just don't know. We just don't understand the mechanism of autoimmune diseases.
Mhm.
I'm like, there has to be a reason why at 60 some years old, my body decided it didn't like itself anymore.
Yeah.
That didn't, and the fact that they couldn't tell me just did not sit well with
Didn't
me.
compute. Yeah.
It did not compute. And I wanted something better for me. I wanted something
Mhm.
better, even for my family. I wanted to be able to, because my kids, I have 3 kids, married and have kids of their own, but my kids were so afraid, which you and I've talked about
Mhm.
this too, that
Mhm.
fear has played so much into this that,
Mhm.
if I can do this without crying.
Let it roll, girl. It's okay.
When my kids came and saw me in that state and saw me so helpless and they couldn't do anything. They've even been um everything. They kind of treated me with kid gloves too. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, mom, we need to do this and we need to so um the kids were like, well, okay, mom, do you think this is going to make you sick? And when I would say, I have no idea. I
Yeah.
have no idea. They were, they got
Mhm.
to the point where it's like they were as helpless as I was.
Yeah.
And, now they're all so excited that I have answers. I have the ability to say, no, I can't, like cucumbers. Cucumbers is a huge thing for me that I can't eat. And so I can say to my kids, nope, if it's got cucumbers in it, I can't eat it,
Mhm.
and I think it even gives more power to my kids and my husband who, sorry,
Oh, you're all good, dear.
I wasn't going to do this.
When we share our hearts, this is what happens. And it's
Yeah,
all
and
good.
it's just it's so empowering.
Mhm.
I love that word because it is empowering. I finally have answers. And
Mhm.
I have resources and I have, the ability to say, to read. I mean, I've always been pretty good at reading labels because I'm not a huge junk food eater,
Mhm.
but I am a voracious label reader now because, there are things that
Yeah.
I know if I get too much of them, could possibly land me back in the hospital. And
Mm.
I'm not willing to risk that. And so I am, but it's not, I don't, I, which is kind of weird to say that I feel empowered by that because now I feel like
But you
I
know what to
have the
look for.
ability to say no. Right, right. And I know how to say, even I think I shared this with you too. I went to a luncheon a couple weeks ago, and the lady that hosted the luncheon I know is big on um dieting things, and so she does a lot of sugar-free stuff, which is one of my triggers. And so I actually said to her, none of this has artificial sweeteners in it, does it? And she said, oh no. And before I would not have, I even thought twice about, I almost thought, no, I'm not even going to eat anything. And then I thought, no, just you can just ask her. And she
Mm-hmm.
was she was super sweet about it. She was like, oh no. And then another friend of mine said, oh, I guess I'm going to have to be careful when I bring chocolate chip cookies or something. And I thought, well, that's why I don't eat
Mm-hmm.
sweets at a potluck, or when I can't read
Mm-hmm.
a label.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been very empowering, and it's been fun. And all of my, I mean, my kids, my husband, my friends have all commented on how much better I look, how much better I act.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's been really cool.
I love that. I think one of the things that I love the most about this journey is that you're all in. Like when we've talked about different foods and, different things that we found in tests and different things to do and whatnot, it's just like, yeah, I'm in. And even though cucumbers are one of the things that, I mean, it's an amazing food, but it's not for you.
Right.
Um, and I think like I was in the middle of a podcast with another group of practitioners and a couple physicians, and they were asking me about how I do my work and what diets do you recommend? I'm like, well, we don't do diets. We
Right.
figure out what foods work and what foods don't. And then we do that. Very simple.
And I love that because I think it gives people, I hate to keep going back, but power. I mean,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
is power. It's the ability to make decisions for myself that are good for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's cool. And that's
Hmm.
everything to me
Yeah.
right now because I felt so helpless and so,
Yeah.
to land in the
Oh,
hospital like that and be dependent on
yeah.
somebody else to find out what's the matter with you, and try it is such a helpless feeling that I
It's
don't
not.
ever want to go back there again. And that
Mhm.
the working with you has given me the ability to know I probably will never have to go back to that because I know what the problem is. I know what caused it. I know how to fix it. And I know what to do with it.
Mm, I love that so much, so very much. So, what do you feel like is one of the most important things that you've been able to accomplish since we've started working together?
Um,
So, kind of what I'm thinking of, and this may help you, was just sharing that you love to entertain. And
oh, yeah. That was where my mind was going. Is that not what she was? Had to
yeah.
rethink that one. No, that is very true. I do love to entertain. I love to have parties. I love to cook. I love to have people over to eat. And uh, probably 2 weeks ago, I cooked fajitas for 11 people and had an absolute ball doing it. And that was my first dinner party since 2022 when I got sick. And so that was huge. That was huge to me because it was like
Mm-hmm.
I actually felt like doing it.
Yep.
I actually had a really good time doing it. We had an absolute ball with everybody at my house, and it was just that was a huge one for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something you haven't been able to do.
Yep. And that was huge. That was absolutely huge. I had, like maybe a couple over once in a
Mm-hmm.
while, but it just the idea of cooking, even for them, I told, and one of the couples I invited over that night was one that I had invited over before, and I said, I have to give you guys a redo because that dinner I cooked for you guys that night was not, that was not me. So
Oh,
they laughed,
girl.
but yeah, it was, yeah,
Yeah,
but that was huge for me to be able to do that.
yeah. I love that. So what would you say to the person listening today that is they just got this huge diagnosis and their insides are shaking. They're having to make decisions around, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do now?" And the options that they're being presented with just are like their intuitive wisdom inside, their heart, whatever you want to say is going, "Mm,"
Yeah,
but they don't know
I know that
anything
feeling.
else. What would you
I know
say
that
to that
feeling. And
person?
I would just say, give this a chance. Give this a
Mhm,
chance. My husband and I talked about it, and I said, but what if this fails?
mhm,
Before I ever talked to you. And he said, if it fails, we'll do something different.
mhm.
But, but it hasn't failed. And it is so worth, I mean, it is hard. And I think, like I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, I said, we are so programmed to think that, um, because I'm a nurse, I come from a medical family, but
Mhm. Yeah,
so I think that helps that we are so programmed to believe that Western medicine, traditional medicine is the only answer out there. And I'm not saying that it's not ever an answer. Um,
exactly.
but there are options out there, and
Mhm.
that first step of saying, I'm going to do something, I'm going to
Mhm.
look into something different,
Yeah,
is so worth the time of doing it, because it's
yeah.
been the best decision I've ever made. It's just
Mm,
been
I love that.
amazing. I just feel like it's, so, here I go with that word again, but so empowering, and that
Yeah.
it's
Mhm,
just, I haven't felt like that for over 2 years, and at
mhm.
least with my health. And
Yeah.
that is something that no money can buy. That's,
Mm,
it's super cool, and it's worth the whatever risk you think is there to step out and try it. Step
yeah,
out and try it, because it's
yeah.
worth it. And
Mm.
there are answers out there. The medical community is
Exactly.
good at saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, which is not an invalid answer to some
Yeah.
questions. But don't,
Mhm.
just give me the chance to find an answer to what is going on. That's what I love about this, is that it gave me answers.
Mm. I love that. I love that. I love watching you come back to life. The
You're
sparkle in
not
your
the first
eyes.
person to tell me that. So, yeah, that's
I
that's been
just
really
love it.
fun.
I just
That's
love
been
it.
really fun. I
Awesome.
met a friend of mine for lunch or breakfast or something a couple weeks ago, and that's what she said. She said, I cannot believe how different you look. She said, you look so good. And I'm
Ah,
like, I feel good. And that's, you know, that's
it's
that's
been
fun. It's really fun, because
yeah.
it's been a long time. It has been a long time since I really started feeling like myself again.
Mm. Ah, I love that. Thank you ever so much for sharing all of this. Oh,
You are
so
so
proud
welcome.
of
It was
you.
my pleasure. Thank you. It was my pleasure. I love it.
Ah, awesome. And thank you everybody that joined us for this. I hope this conversation gave you a little spark of hope in your right in your heart when you're thinking about, "Oh gosh, this is me. This is where I'm at. I don't have answers, but I want them." I hope this conversation is helping you think, "Hmm, maybe you could find some."
Amen to that.
Awesome.